Okay, so now we're going to write the next part of this rule, the next function, which is the roof. So if you remember, you went out and you kind of identified whether these buildings had a gable, shed, hip, or a flat roof. So we're going to have the program generate a form on the top of these buildings that relate to an attribute in the data that you collected. So we have to attribute that. And we're going to attribute the roof type. So we're going to have the rule do something to the top of the building based on this attribute in the data. So to be able to have the this data attribute be a parameter in a rule, we have to kind of attribute it up here. So and we have to type it exactly as it is in our data set, which is all caps roof underscore type, all caps. And right now we're just going to type in random. It doesn't matter what we assign here. Or actually, it's not letting me do that. So let's just say flat. And I'll explain again why this doesn't matter in a second. Okay, so let's write the roof rule. I just went ahead and copy and pasted a previous roof rule that I created for this, and I'll walk you through it. So we typed in roof, because as you recall, we started with the shape. We had the shape extrude to the number of stories times 4.3 meters, and then go to the roof rule. So the next function is a conditional function where it's the roof function, and in case the attribute roof type is equal to hip, then it's going to generate a roof hip with a 45-degree angle. So the program has these built-in functions relating to roof, and that's what we're using. The next part of this rule is case roof type gable, and it'll give it a roof gable of 45-degree. And then if it's a pyramid, same thing, it'll have the roof pyramid function with an angle of 30. And I just picked these angles arbitrarily based on how common the most common angles are for these types of roofs. In the event that the attribute doesn't have a hip, gable, or a pyramid, if the roof type doesn't have hip, gable, or pyramid, then we're just going to have it offset, which is basically a flat roof. So as I mentioned, the program has these automatic functions for roof forms, and we can read about it in the manuals. So if you go to help and you go to help contents, it'll take you directly to these really awesome manuals. And so there's one, if you can type in, you can search for things. Like for instance, if you're looking for a particular type of a roof function that you want to use, say it's a shed roof, you type in that and it gives you a lot of information about the syntax, the different ways that you can write the CGA script, and how each part of that CGA script works so that you can make manipulations as necessary. So the program understands that if you type in the roof hip function, then it's going to do this type of, or the roof shed function, it's going to do this type of generation to the rooftop. So I think we have hip, gable, and pyramid. Let me see if we have shed in there as well. We do have shed. So let's add a shed function to this rule. So case roof underscore type equal shed. Then we want you to give it a shed, we'll just go with 10.3 as well. Okay, so now we have an option to do, and we can adjust these angles as you see fit, but I don't think it's really going to be necessary for our rule. So we have now, our rule is complete. It's a two-function rule. It extrudes and then generates a rule form. So we can close this rule and hit save. And since our buildings are already selected, all we have to do is just kind of drag and drop this new rule on top of this building, on top of these buildings. And we kind of hover it until we see it turn orange. That's when we know that it's selected. And there you go. It will quickly generate, oops, it'll quickly generate your 3D building forms. So for this, for all of these, it generated an offset on top of the roof based on the attributes of the data. So for instance, if I were to go and select this shape and change the attribute of this, the roof type attribute to shed, so I'm changing the object's attributes here, then the rule will generate a shed.